how are you doing? So I completed The Picture of Dorian Gray. Yes, I read it through 2 books and I want to talk about it. First, I also want to talk about the books per se, the editions that I have, and I also want to talk about the story, the classics, everything about it. I just needed a chat session to get it out of my system. So I'm gonna keep it spoiler free for like a little while, and if you would like to listen to the rest of my chat with spoilers, then I'll make a pause in between and you can watch the rest of the video. If you've not read the book before, don't like spoilers, then you can pause and stop at that point of the video, but until then we're spoiler free. So I wanted to start off with these 2 editions in particular. So these are the 2 editions that I have. This is the cloth bound edition, and this is the chapter 1 bookstores, or the big book box special edition of The Picture of Dorian Gray. I think this is the pastel edition as they call it. Yeah, there's something hanging over here, we'll come to that. So I started off with this book, and it is it has this like beautiful excerpt, preface, acknowledgements, introduction, everything that talks about Oscar Wilde as a person and how he wrote the book and all of that. And I thought those were very, very enticing. And even at the end of the book, once the story gets over, there are a lot of notes for each of the chapters that are there in the book. So it's like small excerpts of each of these chapters, an inside look into all of these characters. So I thought that this book was very comprehensive, and if it's the first time you're reading a classics, then I think this book would do justice. This one, on the other hand, I loved this pastel edition, and also it comes with like a beautiful colored illustration of Dorian Gray, and I thought that was lovely. And it stops there. I hated the fact that I could barely like this. I don't know why does the spine make that creaking noise? Just listen to that. Can you hear that? That was so annoying throughout when I was reading the book, because every time I turned to a page and it would start making that creaking noise, everybody in my house would know I was reading this book. So that was like a very, very annoying thing. I don't know what it is with the spine or the way it was like binded, but I could barely read the insides of the story because the lettering starts way before, if you know what I mean. So that was very tricky. I loved these illustrations on top of each of these chapters, but what I didn't like was the font size. I didn't like these are all like pure white pages, the quality of the page, everything was a no for me. And then this was supposed to be the bookmark, or like the page indexer that came with the book, and I cut this so many times and it still keeps becoming like that. I don't know what to do. It was just annoying. So I would not recommend getting this book from chapter 1 bookstores or the big book box. I do, however, love their Little Women edition, and we'll come to that later, but this video is going to be about Dorian Gray. So this edition, a not so great one, this edition, a really good one. So that's what I thought about the editions in particular. Now let us start talking about this beauty that is Dorian Gray. Oh my gosh, this whole book was mind-blowing. It is specifically a classic for a reason. Now I don't know if a lot of people will actually appreciate this book because it has a lot of quality. It has a lot of trigger points around misogynism. So I'm not sure how well this will sit with a lot of people, but I think that the plot of the story and the complexity of the story was just brilliant. So we start off with Dorian, who is like this really charming, really good looking, very, very handsome young man who our protagonist or painter, Basil, paints. So Basil creates this picture of Dorian and gives it to him as a gift, and secretly it feels like Basil is in love with him, but obviously throughout the book and because of the century that this book was written in, there are like no references to anything of that sort. So you kind of have to like read through the lines and understand with the subtlety that Basil probably has something that is a little more than friendship for Dorian Gray. And then we have our other protagonist, who is Lord Henry, who is a married, rich businessman of sorts from the elite society. Now, all of this takes place in the elite crowd of London sometime in, like, I don't know, the 1800s, I guess, or the early 1900s, and or late 1800s, if I'm not wrong. And Lord Henry befriends Dorian Gray. Now we're in a friendship where Dorian Gray is always listening to whatever Lord Henry says. At a point in time, he falls in love with this beautiful small-time theater actress called Sybil, who is actually a really nice personality in the book. I mean, all the personalities in this book are just so fully fleshed out, and you don't feel like disconnected with anybody, which is kind of rare in some of the books that we see now. I mean, how does Oscar Wilde, playfully write these beautiful writings about all of these people in such a very ecstatic way? I really do not know. But he falls in love with her, and then she ends up killing herself, for which Dorian feels like he's responsible, because he goes and tells her that he doesn't want to be with her anymore because she doesn't see herself as a big time actress, which seemed like a really silly reason to start off with, but that's where the story actually begins. So this is where I will pause, because there are a few elements that I would like to discuss which would become non-spoiler free. So if you have read the book and you're just looking to chat, keep going forward, or else this is your cue to stop this video, pause it, read the book, and come back. So we have got young Dorian, who is now, I don't know, like 10-20 years down or so, but he doesn't age, or so that's what's written in the book. So he becomes this really evil person who ends up committing murders. He does a lot of evil things in his life. Ever since Sybil's death, he's like changed into this person who nobody understands as who he used to be before. So we go through this from Dorian's point of view, but I guess towards the end I got like flummoxed, because the ending, what happens is when Dorian goes, he like puts the picture that Basil actually gives him on his in his attic, and he covers it with like a cloth so he doesn't have to look at it ever. He feels as though that the picture becomes more and more evil with every evil thing that he does. So the complexity of his character, along with what is portrayed in the book, is just brilliant. When towards the end, he actually goes up and he ends up killing Basil, and then that kind of eats into him, and then he gets another friend of his, Alex, to go ahead and clean up his mess, and then Alex commits suicide. So it's like this whole plethora of crazy stuff that keeps happening in the book once Dorian becomes this person that nobody recognizes. And he still is like a stalwart in this elite society. Every woman wants to be with him, every man wants to be like him, but deep within he knows that he is like this really bad person. And then towards the end of the book, when he actually decides that, he wants to do good and be better, and he says that that picture, that portrait of him is the one that's making him do all these evil things, and looking at it makes him do all these bad things, and he takes a knife and goes and stabs the portrait. And what I don't understand here is he dies immediately, and the picture de-ages and becomes like this young portrait that Basil had actually painted. And him as a person, when the servants of the house come and open the door and see, there's like this old person that's lying on the ground, stabbed on his heart. And the only way that they recognize that he is Dorian Gray is with his jewelry and his rings and all of that. And so what I thought immediately after reading it was possibly Dorian kept thinking in his mind that he did all these things, and the picture actually never aged. And when he killed the picture, it's a synonym of him actually killing himself. I don't know how to like think about this, because there's so many different ways that this could be thought of as what Oscar Wilde could have written in the book. But then when I just read up on quite a bit of what others were thinking about the ending, it looked like he actually, the portrait was evil, and the moment he killed the portrait, it synonymed with him killing himself. So killing the portrait is killing him, and the portrait becomes young again and youthful, and he dies. So he has this obsession over staying young, and that's why he kept doing all these murders, because he had made a deal with the devil in order to keep himself young, as long as he keeps giving up these souls. So I don't know. I initially thought maybe he has some kind of a disorder where he thinks that he's not aging, but he's actually in reality aging. But then when it said that the servants came and saw him as an old man and they could only recognize him with his jewelry, it kind of felt like maybe I was wrong. I don't know. If you have read Dorian Gray, let me know what your take on this is, because I felt as though this could be portrayed in so many different ways, and Oscar Wilde himself being a very complex person. So if you read up on Oscar Wilde and his background, it just feels like he's been through a lot. He himself is homosexual, and he'd been imprisoned for being a homosexual person, and so it's just a very complex story in itself for him, and eventually he died. So if you kind of correlate his life with this book, it just felt so surreal. So I don't know if you have a different take on how this book actually felt for you, or what your feelings were towards the end of the book, or who your favorite characters were, or what your take on Dorian was, then let me know in the comments below, because I would love to chat about it a little more, because this book was totally worth it. So I have also thought that probably I will be reading one classics book maybe once a month or once in 2 months, depending upon the size of the book and the complexity of the book, and then we can talk about it in length on my channel. So if you are a classics for classics friend, or a person who loves classics, then make sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, and I will see you in another video. Bye.